The stars looked different now. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and stared out at the empty space ahead. 3 months had passed since any ship came back from the Kepler Nebula. The big trading route that connected the outer planets to the center of the galaxy had gone quiet. No messages, no signals, nothing. Jake rubbed his tired eyes. He had been flying patrol missions for weeks now, checking the edges of human space. His ship, the Defiant, was not the biggest or the fastest in the human fleet, but it was tough. Jake liked that about her. "Captain," called Amy Clark from her station. She was young, maybe 25, with bright eyes that never seemed to miss anything. "I'm getting something weird on the long-range scanners." Jake walked over to her console. The screen showed lines of data that meant nothing to most people, but Amy could read them like a book. "What kind of weird?" "It's faint, sir. Really faint. But it's coming from inside the Kepler Nebula." Amy's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "It looks like a distress signal, but it's not in any language our computers know." Dr. Lisa Hayes looked up from her science station. She was older than most of the crew, with gray hair tied back in a simple ponytail. Lisa had been studying space for longer than Jake had been alive. "Let me take a look at that signal." Jake watched as Lisa pulled the data to her own screen. Her face grew serious as she studied the patterns. "This is interesting. The signal is weak, but it's repeating the same thing over and over. See these numbers? They're showing a mathematical pattern. Someone is definitely trying to communicate." "But who?" asked Ryan Bell, Jake's second in command. Ryan was a careful man who always thought about the dangers before acting. No ships have come out of that nebula in months. The Galactic Council marked it as a dead zone. Jake knew Ryan was right to be worried. The Galactic Council was made up of the oldest and smartest alien races in the galaxy. When they said a place was dangerous, smart people listened. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for 50 years. They were still the new kids trying to prove they belonged with the big players. "Captain," Amy said, her voice excited, "I'm getting more data now. The signal is coming from deep, inside the nebula, near the center. And sir, there's something else. The transmission shows signs of energy interference. Big energy interference." Lisa ran the new data through the ship's computers. The results made her frown. "Jake, whatever is causing this interference has technology we've never seen before. The energy readings are off the charts." Ryan stepped closer to Jake. "Sir, you know what the Council said about the Kepler Nebula. Any ship that goes in there without permission could face serious trouble. They might kick us out of the galactic community." Jake looked at the star map on the main screen. The Kepler Nebula was marked in red, showing it was off limits. But somewhere in that dangerous cloud of gas and dust, someone was calling for help. The signal was weak, but it was there. It was real. "How long has that signal been transmitting?" Jake asked. Amy checked her readings again. "Based on the pattern degradation, I'd say at least 2 weeks. Maybe longer." 2 weeks. Jake thought about that. Someone had been trapped and calling for help for 2 weeks. Every day that passed made their chances of survival smaller. Tony Davis, the ship's engineer, joined the conversation. He was a big man with thick hands that could fix anything. "Captain, if we're thinking about going in there, I should mention that our shields aren't designed for heavy nebula work. Those gas clouds can be tough on a ship's systems." Kate Rogers, their navigation officer, pulled up detailed maps of the nebula. "Sir, the safe routes through the Kepler Nebula were mapped by the Zephyrian Empire over 100 years ago, but those maps are marked as classified now. We'd be flying blind." Jake studied the faces of his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting for his decision. He could see the worry in their eyes, but he could also see something else. Hope. They wanted to help whoever was sending that signal, just like he did. "Amy, how clear can you make that signal?" Jake asked. "Give me a few minutes, sir. I might be able to clean it up." Amy's fingers flew over her controls. The bridge was quiet except for the soft sounds of the ship's systems. After 5 minutes, Amy looked up with a smile. "Got it, Captain. The signal is much clearer now. And, sir, I can tell you one thing for sure. This isn't just a random distress call. The mathematical pattern shows intelligence, real intelligence. Someone is alive in there and they're trying very hard to get our attention. Jake looked at the star map again. The Kepler Nebula stretched across a huge area of space. It was beautiful in its own way, with swirls of blue and purple gas lit up by young stars. But it was also dangerous. Ships that went in there had been disappearing. "Dr. Hayes," Jake said, "in your professional opinion, what are the chances that someone could survive in that nebula for weeks?" Lisa thought carefully before answering. "It depends on what kind of ship they have and what's threatening them. But Jake, the energy readings I'm seeing suggest something big is happening in there, something that could be very dangerous." Ryan stepped forward. "Captain, I have to advise against this. We're one ship with a crew of 40 people. If the Galactic Council marked that area as forbidden, they had good reasons." Jake nodded. He understood Ryan's concerns. A good captain listened to his officers, especially when they were worried about safety. But Jake also knew something else. He knew that humans had a reputation in the galaxy for being stubborn. Other races saw it as a weakness. Jake thought it might be their greatest strength. "Amy, keep monitoring that signal. I want to know if it changes or gets weaker." Jake turned to address his whole crew. "Everyone listen up. We've got people in trouble. I don't know who they are or what kind of trouble they're in, but they're calling for help. The question is, what kind of people are we?" The bridge was silent for a moment. Then Tony spoke up. "We're the kind of people who answer distress calls, Captain." "Even when it's dangerous?" Jake asked. "Especially when it's dangerous," Amy added, with a grin. Jake looked at Ryan, who sighed and shook his head. But then Ryan smiled too. "Well, Captain, if we're going to break galactic law, we might as well do it for a good reason." "All right then," Jake said. "Kate, plot a course for the Kepler Nebula. Tony, I want our shields at maximum power. Amy, keep tracking that signal. Dr. Hayes, I want you to study everything we know about that nebula. And Ryan, start preparing the crew for whatever we might find in there." As the Defiant changed course toward the Forbidden Nebula, Jake felt a familiar feeling in his chest. It was the same feeling he'd had as a young pilot when he first left Earth. It was excitement mixed with fear, hope mixed with uncertainty. It was the feeling of flying into the unknown. The distress signal continued to pulse through space, weak but steady. Someone was waiting for help. Jake Morrison and his crew were going to make sure that help arrived. The edge of the Kepler Nebula looked peaceful from a distance. Swirls of blue and purple gas moved slowly in space, lit up by bright young stars. Jake Morrison watched it grow larger on the main screen as the Defiant approached. It was beautiful, but something felt wrong. "Captain, we're getting some strange readings," Amy called out from her station. Her voice sounded worried. "The nebula isn't behaving like normal gas clouds. There's energy moving through it, like it's alive." Tony Davis was already busy at his engineering console. His big hands moved quickly over the controls as warning lights started flashing. "Shields are holding, but barely. Whatever's in that nebula is trying to eat our ship's power." The Defiant shook as they entered the outer edge of the gas cloud. Kate Rogers fought to keep them on course as space itself seemed to twist around them. "Navigation is going crazy, Captain. It's like the nebula is trying to confuse our instruments." Jake gripped his chair as another wave of energy hit their ship. This was nothing like the reports he'd read about nebula exploration. Normal gas clouds were calm, empty spaces between stars. This place felt hungry. "Amy, are you still getting that distress signal?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir. It's getting stronger. But Captain, I'm picking up something else now, something big." Amy's face went pale as she read her instruments. "There's a massive object at the center of the nebula. It's huge, bigger than anything in our databases." Dr. Lisa Hayes was studying the energy readings with growing alarm. "Jake, this nebula isn't natural. Something is controlling it, feeding off it. The energy patterns show clear signs of artificial manipulation." The ship shook again, harder this time. Sparks flew from one of the control panels, and Tony ran to put out a small fire. "Shields down to 60%, Captain. We can't take much more of this." "Keep us moving toward that signal," Jake ordered. How far to the source? Kate checked her instruments through the interference. About 2 hours at current speed, sir. But I don't know if the ship can handle 2 hours of this. Jake was about to respond when the view screen cleared for a moment. What they saw made everyone on the bridge stop talking. In the distance, barely visible through the swirling gas, was something impossible. A massive structure hung in space, dark and angular. It was bigger than any space station Jake had ever seen, bigger than some moons. Its surface was covered with moving tendrils that reached out into the nebula like hungry arms. The tendrils pulsed with dark energy as they pulled gas and matter into the structure. "My God," whispered Dr. Hayes. "It's not just a ship. It's a harvesting station. It's been feeding on everything that enters this nebula." Amy's instruments were going wild. "Captain, I'm reading multiple ships near that thing. They look like they're trapped in some kind of energy web. The distress signal is coming from there." Jake studied the images on the screen. He could see the faint outlines of ships caught in glowing strands of energy that connected them to the massive alien structure. Some of the ships looked familiar. Zephyrian designs, Andromedan cruisers, even some types he'd never seen before. "How many ships?" Jake asked. "At least 15, maybe more. And Captain, I'm reading life signs. Weak, but they're there. People are still alive on those ships." Tony looked up from his damage control efforts. "Captain, that thing is charging. Up for something. Energy readings are spiking across the board." Dr. Hayes was studying the alien structure with growing understanding and horror. "It's preparing to feed again. Those ships, the people on them, they're like food to that thing. It's been keeping them alive to harvest their energy slowly." "How long do we have?" Jake asked. "Based on the energy buildup, maybe an hour before it starts the next feeding cycle," Hayes replied. "After that, everyone on those ships will be dead." Ryan Bell stepped closer to Jake. "Sir, we need to call for backup. This is way beyond what one ship can handle. We should get back to Council space and report this." Jake looked at the trapped ships on the screen. 15 ships meant hundreds, maybe thousands of people. "Ryan, by the time we get back and the Council decides what to do, how many of those people will still be alive?" "Probably none," Ryan admitted. "But Captain, what can we do? That thing destroyed ships bigger and better armed than us." Jake studied the alien structure again. It was massive, powerful, and clearly designed for destroying ships. But there was something about it that bothered him. It was too perfect, too confident, like it had never faced a real challenge. "Dr. Hayes, what do we know about the ships that were captured?" Jake asked. "From what I can see, they're all using standard galactic technology. Plasma weapons, energy, shields, quantum drives. All very advanced, all very similar in design principles." "And our ship?" Hayes looked confused for a moment, then understanding dawned on her face. "Our ship is different. We use older technology. Kinetic weapons, chemical, explosives, nuclear power. Most galactic races stopped using those things thousands of years ago." Amy looked up from her console with excitement. "Captain, that thing's energy web is designed to drain power from advanced ships, but our systems work differently. We might be able to get closer than the others did." Tony was already thinking about the possibilities. "Our missiles don't use energy guidance systems like galactic weapons. They're self-contained, independent. That thing might not even recognize them as weapons." Jake felt a plan forming in his mind. It was dangerous, probably crazy, but it might work. "Amy, can you communicate with the trapped ships?" "I think so, sir. The alien interference is strong, but I might be able to get through." "Do it. Tell them to prepare for emergency evacuation. All crew to escape pods, ready to launch on my signal." Ryan stared at Jake. "Captain, what are you planning?" "Something that thing has never seen before," Jake replied. "Kate, plot a direct course to that structure. Tony, I want every missile we have armed and ready, and prepare the nuclear charges." "Nuclear charges?" Hayes asked. "Jake, those are for asteroid mining. They're not military weapons." "No, they're not," Jake agreed. "There's something much more dangerous to that thing. They're unpredictable." The Defiant moved deeper into the nebula, fighting against energy currents that tried to drag them off course. The alien structure grew larger on the screen, its dark surface crawling with biomechanical tendrils that reached out toward their ship. "It's noticed us," Amy reported. "I'm detecting energy buildups along its surface. It's preparing to attack." "Shields to maximum," Jake ordered. "All hands, prepare for combat." The first energy blast from the alien structure hit them like a hammer. The ship shook violently, and lights flickered throughout the bridge. Tony worked frantically to keep their systems online. "Shields down to 40% from that one hit." Tony called out, "This thing has serious firepower." More energy tendrils reached out toward the Defiant, trying to grab them like they had grabbed the other ships. But Kate was ready, dodging and weaving through the grasping appendages. "Amy, are you through to the trapped ships?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir," they're responding. "All ships report they're preparing to abandon ship on your command." Jake watched as more energy blasts lit up the space around them. The alien structure was focusing all its attention on their ship now, trying to capture or destroy them. Good. That meant it wasn't paying attention to the trapped vessels. "Range to target?" Jake asked. 2,000 meters in closing, Kate replied. "But Captain, at this range those energy weapons will tear us apart." "Not if we're fast enough," Jake said. He turned to Tony. "Are the missiles ready?" "All tubes loaded, sir. Nuclear charges armed and ready." Jake took a deep breath. This was it. One small human ship against a cosmic horror that had been feeding on galactic civilization for who knows how long. The odds were terrible, but that had never stopped humans before. "All ships, this is Captain Morrison of the human vessel Defiant," Jake announced over the open channel. "Prepare to abandon ship in 30 seconds. We're going to give you a way out." He turned to his crew. "Everyone ready?" They all nodded, their faces showing the same mixture of fear and determination that Jake felt. "Fire all missiles," Jake ordered. DD. Defiant's missile tubes opened, and a stream of nuclear-tipped projectiles shot out toward the alien structure. They moved fast, faster than the creature's energy defenses could track. The alien structure tried to intercept them with energy beams, but the missiles were too small, too fast, and too primitive for its sophisticated systems to handle effectively. Thick, first nuclear explosion lit up the nebula like a small sun. The first nuclear explosion tore a massive hole in the alien structure's dark hull. The creature screamed, not with sound, but with energy waves that made every instrument on the Defiant go wild. Jake Morrison watched as chunks of biomechanical debris spun away into space. "Direct hit," Kate shouted from her navigation station. "We got through their shields." But the victory was short-lived. The alien harvester was huge, and one missile wasn't enough to stop it. Already, Jake could see the damaged section starting to repair itself. New tendrils grew from the wound, reaching out to collect the floating debris and pull it back into the structure. "It's healing itself," Dr. Hayes said in amazement. "The biomechanical systems are designed for self-repair." More energy blasts from the creature lit up the space around the Defiant. Tony Davis fought to keep their shields working as the ship shook under the assault. "Shields down to 20%, Captain. We can't take many more hits like that." Jake studied the tactical display. They had 12 missiles left, plus the nuclear mining charges. Against a structure the size of a small moon, it didn't seem like enough. But then he noticed something important. "Amy, look at those trapped ships. Are they still caught in the energy web?" Amy checked her scanners. "No, sir. The web is fluctuating. Our attack disrupted it. Some of the ships are breaking free." On the main screen, Jake could see several of the captured vessels pulling away from the alien structure. Their engines were weak after being drained for so long, but they were moving. People were escaping. "All ships, this is Morrison." Jake broadcast. "Get clear of the area. We're going to try something dangerous." Ryan Bell grabbed Jake's arm. "Captain, we need to go too. We've done what we came to do. We saved them." Jake shook his head. "Not all of them. There are still ships trapped close to that thing's core, and look at the energy readings. It's getting ready to grab everything in the area again." including the ships that just broke free. Dr. Hayes was studying the alien structure's energy patterns. Jake, I think I understand how this thing works. It uses a central power core to generate the energy webs. If we could damage that core, the whole system would shut down. Jake finished. Where is it? Hayes pointed to a section deep inside the structure where energy readings were strongest. There, about 3 kilometers inside the hull. But Captain, it's heavily protected. We'd have to get inside the structure to reach it. Tony looked up from his engineering console. Captain, I've been thinking about our nuclear mining charges. They're designed to burrow into asteroids before exploding. If we could get them inside that thing's hull. Jake understood immediately. The mining charges weren't just explosives. They were designed to penetrate deep into solid matter before detonating. Against the alien structure's biomechanical hull, they would be devastating. How do we deliver them? Jake asked. Kate studied the navigation display. There's a breach in the hull where our first missile hit. If we flew straight at it. That's suicide, Ryan interrupted. The moment we get close, those energy tendrils will grab us. Jake looked at his crew. They were all young, all brave, all looking at him with trust in their eyes. He had brought them here to save lives, and they had done that. But there were still people trapped, still people who would die if the alien harvester wasn't stopped. There might be another way, Amy said quietly. Captain, what if we don't try to avoid the energy tendrils? What if we let them grab us? Everyone turned to look at her. She continued, her voice growing more confident. The creature pulls captured ships toward its core to drain them slowly. If we let it capture us, it would bring us right where we want to go. And then we blow up the mining charges while we're inside it, Tony added with understanding. The explosion would be contained inside the structure, doing maximum damage. Dr. Hayes ran quick calculations. The energy release from our nuclear charges, detonated inside the creature's core, it would probably destroy the entire structure. Along with us, Ryan pointed out. Jake studied the faces of his crew again. He could order them to leave. They had already done more than anyone could ask, but he could see in their eyes that they were thinking the same thing he was thinking. There were still people trapped out there, still people who would die if they didn't act. All hands, this is the captain, Jake announced over the ship's communication system. Prepare to abandon ship, all crew to escape pods immediately. Sir? Amy asked, confused. You heard me. Everyone off the ship. That's an order. Ryan stepped forward. Captain, what are you planning? I'm going to fly this ship into that thing's core and detonate our nuclear charges. But I'm doing it alone. The rest of you are getting out of here. Like hell we are, Tony said firmly. Captain, with respect, you'll need an engineer to arm those charges properly, and Amy will need to guide us to the core, and Kate will need to fly us there. And I'll need to monitor the energy patterns to make sure we hit the right spot, Dr. Hayes added. Jake looked around the bridge. This is not a democracy. I'm ordering you to abandon ship. Then we're disobeying orders, Amy said with a smile. Sir. Jake stared at them for a long moment, then shook his head. You're all crazy. We learn from the best, Ryan replied. More energy blasts hit the Defiant and the lights flickered again. Time was running out. Jake made his decision. All right. If we're doing this, we do it right. Tony, prepare the nuclear charges. Set them for manual detonation. I want to control exactly when they go off. Amy, monitor our position relative to the creature's core. Kate, plot a course straight for that breach in the hull. What about the crew? Ryan asked. Anyone who wants to leave can take the escape pods now, Jake announced. We're about to do something very dangerous, and I won't order anyone to stay. Throughout the ship, crew members made their choice. A few took the escape pods, but most stayed. They were human, and humans didn't abandon each other in a fight. All right, Jake said, settling into his captain's chair. Let's show this thing. What happens when you mess with people under human protection? The Defiant accelerated toward the alien structure, no longer trying to avoid the energy tendrils that reached out toward them. Jake watched on the screen as the massive appendages wrapped around his ship, pulling them toward the dark hull. Energy drain is starting, Tony reported. But our systems are holding better than expected. This thing is designed to drain advanced Galactic technology, not our primitive human systems. They passed through the breach in the hull and entered the alien structure's interior. It was like flying through the inside of a living creature. Passages pulsed with biomechanical rhythms, and strange lights flickered along the walls. Core is straight ahead, Amy reported. 2 kilometers and closing. The alien structure seemed to realize something was wrong. Energy barriers tried to block their path, but the Defiant's momentum carried them through. More tendrils reached out to stop them. But Kate dodged skillfully through the maze of passages. 1 kilometer to core, Amy called out. Jake could see it now on the main screen. A massive chamber filled with pulsing energy. This was the heart of the creature, the source of its power, and they were flying straight toward it. Nuclear charges. Armed, Tony reported. Ready for manual detonation. 500 meters, Amy said. Jake gripped the controls tightly. In a few seconds it would all be over. Either they would destroy this cosmic horror or they would die trying. But either way, they had saved the people who were trapped here. 100 meters, Amy called out. All hands, brace for impact, Jake announced. The Defiant smashed into the alien core and Jake Morrison pressed the detonation button. The explosion tore through the alien structure like lightning through a tree. Jake Morrison felt the Defiant shake apart around him as nuclear fire consumed the creature's core. The biomechanical walls screamed and twisted as their power source died. But something unexpected happened. Instead of destroying the human ship instantly, the creature's death throes created a protective bubble around the Defiant. The alien core's collapse formed a temporary void that shielded them from the worst of the destruction. Emergency power, Tony Davis shouted over the noise of failing systems. Hull breach in sections 4 through 7. We're losing atmosphere. Jake pulled himself up from where the explosion had thrown him. The bridge was a mess of sparks and broken equipment, but they were alive. Somehow, impossibly, they were alive. Report, Jake called out. Navigation is down, Kate Rogers said, blood running from a cut on her forehead. But I think we're moving, away from the core. The explosion pushed us toward the outer hull. Amy Clark was working frantically at her damaged console. Communication systems are barely working, but I'm getting signals from the escaped ships. They're all clear of the structure. Dr. Hayes looked up from her science station, her clothes torn but her eyes bright with excitement. Jake, it worked. The core explosion is creating a chain reaction. The entire structure is collapsing. Through the cracked main screen, they could see the alien harvester tearing itself apart. Massive sections of biomechanical hull spun away into space as internal explosions rippled through the creature's body. The energy webs that had held the trapped ships dissolved completely. How many ships got away? Jake asked. 15 confirmed, Amy replied. Wait, make that 16. Another one just broke free from the collapse zone. But their celebration was cut short as more of the Defiant systems failed. The ship was dying around them, torn apart by the forces they had unleashed. Hull integrity at 15%, Tony reported grimly. We've got maybe 10 minutes before complete structural failure. Escape pods? Jake asked. 3 pods are functional, Ryan Bell answered, checking the evacuation systems. But Captain, we've got 40 crew members left on board. Jake did the math quickly. Each escape pod could hold maybe 6 people in an emergency. Half the crew would have to stay behind. All hands abandon ship, Jake ordered over the ship's communication system. Repeat, all hands abandon ship immediately. Sir, Amy said quietly, the pods won't hold everyone. I know, Jake replied. Senior officers stay behind to make sure everyone else gets out safely. Ryan stepped forward. Captain, as your first officer, I order you to take the first pod. The crew needs you to survive. Jake almost smiled at that. You can't order me. Ryan, I'm the captain. Then as your friend, I'm asking you, Ryan said seriously. Before Jake could respond, Amy spoke up from her station. Captain, I'm getting a signal from one of the escaped ships. They're coming back for us. On the screen, they could see a large Zephyrian cruiser moving toward their position. Its hull was damaged from its time in the energy web, but it was still spaceworthy. This is Captain Vextar of the Zephyrian vessel Starlight, came a voice over the communication system. Human ship, prepare to receive rescue shuttles. We're not leaving you behind. More voices joined in. This is Commander Thane of the Andromedan ship Nebula's Edge. Our shuttles are on the way. Kepler station to human vessel. We owe you our lives. Rescue craft launching now. Jake felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the failing. Life support systems. All around them, the ships they had saved were turning back to help. Aliens from a dozen different worlds, people who had been enemies of each other in the past, were working together to rescue the humans who had saved them. Tony. How long do we have? Jake asked. Maybe 5 minutes before the ship breaks apart completely, Tony replied. But the rescue shuttles should be here in 3. Those were the longest 3 minutes of Jake's life. The Defiant groaned and shook as her hull continued to fail. Sections of the ship vented atmosphere into space, and the artificial gravity flickered on and off. But the rescue shuttles arrived exactly when they said they would. One by one, the remaining crew members of the Defiant were transferred to the alien rescue craft. Jake was the last to leave, as tradition demanded. As his shuttle pulled away from the dying ship, Jake watched the Defiant finally break apart. She had been a good ship and she had died doing something important. He could live with that. The rescue shuttle docked with the Zephyrian cruiser, and Jake found himself face to face with Captain Vextar. The alien was tall and thin, with silver skin that shimmered in the ship's lights. By Zephyrian standards, he was probably very old and very distinguished. Captain Morrison, Vextar said in perfect English, I am in your debt, we all are. Jake looked around the rescue bay. His crew was being treated by alien medical teams, and they all seemed to be in good shape. We just did what anyone would do. No, said another voice. Jake turned to see Commander Thane, the Andromedan officer. She was shorter than the Zephyrian, with blue skin and large dark eyes. What you did was impossible. That creature had been feeding in this nebula for decades. Entire fleets have been sent against it, and all were captured or destroyed. How did you know to use primitive weapons? Asked a third alien, this one from a species Jake didn't recognize. Our energy weapons were useless against its shields. Jake thought about how to explain it. We didn't know they were primitive weapons. To us, they were just the tools we had available. Humans still use nuclear power because we're new to space travel. We still use kinetic weapons because they work. Dr. Hayes, who had been listening to the conversation, stepped forward. The creature's defenses were designed to counter advanced galactic technology, plasma weapons, energy shields, quantum computers. But our technology developed differently. We never abandoned the older methods. You mean you still fight like barbarians, said the unknown alien. But there was respect in his voice, not insult. I guess we do, Jake admitted. And sometimes that's exactly what the situation calls for. Captain Vexistar was studying readouts from his ship's sensors. The energy disruption from the creature's destruction is clearing the entire nebula. Trade routes that have been closed for months will be safe again. How many people were you able to save? Jake asked. All of them, Commander Thane replied with amazement. 15 ships, over 2,000 individuals from 12 different species. Because of your actions, Captain Morrison, they will all see their families again. Jake felt the weight of that number. 2,000 lives. People with families, friends, dreams, and hopes. They were alive because he and his crew had chosen to answer a distress call. Amy Clark approached the group, her young face still showing the excitement of their adventure. Captain, I've been monitoring galactic communication channels. Word of what we did is spreading fast. The Galactic Council is calling an emergency session. Are we in trouble? Jake asked. Captain Vextar made a sound that might have been Zephyrian laughter. Captain Morrison, I do not think you understand. What you have done here will change how the galaxy sees humanity forever. You faced something that defeated our best ships and our most advanced weapons, and you destroyed it with tools we had forgotten existed. We fought with courage when others would have fled, added Commander Thane, and you risked your lives to save people you had never met. Jake looked around at the faces surrounding him, alien faces from worlds he had never seen, people whose cultures he barely understood. But he could see something universal in their expressions: gratitude, respect, and something else. Hope. "Captain," Amy said quietly, "there's a message coming in from Earth Command. They want a full report on what happened here." Jake nodded. It would be a long report, and he wasn't sure how his superiors would react to his decision to enter the Forbidden Nebula. But he knew one thing for certain. When the galaxy called for help, humanity had answered, and they always would. 6 months after the battle at Kepler Nebula, the Galaxy Council building buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the Great Hall, their voices creating a mix of sounds that no human ear was designed to understand. But today everyone was speaking the same language, the language of change. Ambassador John Phillips walked through the massive doors and took his place at the human delegation table. He was a calm man with gray hair and steady eyes, the kind of person who made other people feel safe. But today even John felt nervous. The rescue at Kepler Nebula had become the most talked about event in recent galactic history. News services across 1,000 worlds had told the story of how one small human ship had succeeded, where entire fleets had failed. Captain Jake Morrison and his crew were now famous from the core worlds to the outer rim. But fame came with a price. Some species saw humanity's actions as heroic, others saw them as dangerous. High Counselor Vexitai of the Zephyrian Empire called the session to order. His voice carried clearly through the hall's translation systems. "We are here to discuss the events at Kepler Nebula and their implications for galactic security." John stood up when called upon. Around him, he could see the faces of beings from across the galaxy. Some looked friendly, others did not. Ambassador Phillips, High Counselor Vexitai continued, "Your species has violated several galactic treaties by using atomic weapons in a restricted zone. How do you answer these charges?" John had prepared for this question for months. "With respect, High Counselor, those treaties were written to prevent the destruction of inhabited worlds. We used our weapons to save lives, not take them." Counselor, Thane of the Andromedan Federation leaned forward in her seat. She was one of the aliens who had been rescued from the harvester creature. "The question is not whether your intentions were good, Ambassador. The question is whether your methods were acceptable." "Our methods worked," John replied simply. 2,000 people are alive today because of what Captain Morrison and his crew did. A new voice spoke up from the back of the hall. "And what happens next time? Do humans plan to solve every problem with explosives?" John turned to see who had spoken. It was Counselor Rax of the Hegemony Coalition, a group of worlds that believed in strict order and careful planning. They had never liked humanity's tendency to act first and ask permission later. "We plan to do whatever is necessary to protect innocent lives," John answered. "Just like we always have." "That's exactly what worries us," Counselor Rax replied. "Your species has been in space for barely 50 years, yet you act like you own the galaxy." Murmurs of agreement came from several sections of the hall. John could feel the mood shifting against him. He had expected this, but it still hurt to hear. Then Captain Vextar of the Zephyrian cruiser stood up. He was one of the officers who had been trapped by the harvester creature. "If I may speak, High Counselor?" "You may," Vextai replied. "I was there," Vextar said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "I watched my ship get caught in that creature's web. I felt my crew growing weaker as it drained our life energy. I thought we were going to die in that place." "Ito." Hall grew quiet as Vextar continued. "Then the humans arrived. One small ship against something that had destroyed entire fleets. They could have turned around and left us to die. No one would have blamed them. But they didn't leave," added Commander Thane, who had also stood up. "They stayed and fought. They used weapons that most of us had forgotten existed. Weapons that we thought were primitive and useless." More voices joined in. Officers from the ships that had been saved began sharing their stories. They talked about watching the human ship fly straight into certain death to save people they had never met. They talked about the courage it took to face the unknown with nothing but hope and determination. Dr. Elena Martinez, the Council's xenopsychologist, requested permission to speak. She was a small woman with dark hair and intelligent eyes. Hi, Counselor. I have studied the psychological profiles of every species in this alliance. What the humans did at Kepler Nebula tells us something important about their nature. Explain, Vextai commanded. Most species in this galaxy evolved past violence millions of years ago. They became peaceful, civilized, efficient. They learned to solve problems with technology and diplomacy. But humans are different. They evolved on a dangerous world that tried to kill them every day. They never stopped expecting the universe to be hostile. Dr. Martinez activated a holographic display showing human history. While other species were building perfect societies, humans were fighting for survival. They kept their weapons because they knew that someday they might need them again. Counselor Rax interrupted. Are you saying that barbarism is somehow superior to civilization? I'm saying that sometimes the galaxy needs barbarians, Dr. Martinez replied. Your energy weapons and quantum shields are magnificent achievements against known threats. But when something truly alien arrives, something that doesn't follow your rules, you need people who remember how to break things. The hall erupted in discussion. Some species argued that humans were too dangerous to trust with advanced technology. Others insisted that humanity's willingness to fight had saved countless lives. High Counselor Vextai called for order. The question before us is simple. How do we respond to humanity's actions? Do we punish them for breaking our laws? Or do we reward them for saving our people? The debate went on for hours. Species after species voiced their opinions. Some wanted to restrict human access to galactic technology. Others wanted to give humans more responsibility in galactic security. Finally, Ambassador Phillips was allowed to speak again. High Counselor, members of the Council, I understand your concerns about my species. We are young, aggressive, and we don't always follow the rules. But I want you to remember something. John activated his own holographic display, showing images from the Kepler Nebula rescue. When that distress signal echoed through space, only one ship answered. Only one crew was willing to risk everything to save strangers. That crew was human. The images showed the Defiant flying into the alien structure, the nuclear explosions that destroyed the Harvester, and the rescue of the trapped ships. We didn't save those people because we expected a reward. We saved them because it was the right thing to do. And if a similar situation arises again, asked Counselor Thane. Then we'll do it again, John replied. Because that's who we are. Humans don't abandon people in trouble. We never have and we never will. The final vote was closer than anyone expected. Some species voted to censure humanity for violating galactic law. Others voted to commend them for their heroism. But in the end, a narrow majority supported a compromise solution. Humanity would be granted special status as guardians of last resort. When conventional methods failed, when the galaxy faced threats that couldn't be handled by normal means, humans would be called upon to act. They would have the authority to use whatever methods were necessary, including their primitive weapons. As the session ended, High Counselor Vextai approached John personally. Ambassador Phillips, I hope your species understands the responsibility we are placing on them. We understand, John replied, and we won't let you down. Captain Vextar joined the conversation. The galaxy has grown comfortable, Ambassador. We had forgotten that the universe is still dangerous. Your species reminded us of that. John thought about Jake Morrison and his crew, now heroes across 1,000 worlds. They had answered a distress call because it was the right thing to do. They had fought with everything they had because people needed saving. High Counselor, John said, the next time someone sends a distress signal into the void, they won't have to wonder if anyone will come. Humans will be listening, and we will answer. As John left the council building, he looked up at the stars visible through the transparent dome overhead. Somewhere out there, Jake Morrison was probably flying, another patrol mission, ready to rush toward danger whenever duty called. The galaxy had learned something important at Kepler Nebula. Sometimes, when civilization wasn't enough, you needed people who remembered how to be wild. You needed people who would fight impossible odds for strangers they had never met. You needed humans. The distress signal had echoed through space, and humanity had answered. The galaxy would never be the same. And perhaps, John thought as he walked through the alien city, that was exactly what it needed to be.